Every week, 25 million Americans heard that famous piano playing "Those Were the Days." What they didn't know was that Carroll O'Connor was fighting a secret war over those very notes. He refused to show up for rehearsals. He sued for thousands of dollars. He had a completely different vision for how the show should sound. The theme song we all remember almost never happened. O'Connor's original idea was so different, it would have shocked viewers. The real story involves betrayal, big money, and one man's stubborn artistic vision. In the late 1960s, Norman Lear wasn't just flipping through Variety magazine for fun. He was on the hunt. America was changing, fast, and the old shiny sitcoms weren't saying anything real. Then he saw it, an article about a BBC show called "Till Death Us Do Part." The headline called it a national controversy. The show had this loud, angry man named Alf Garnett, who hated everyone and said so, every episode. He fought with his liberal son-in-law at dinner about politics, race, religion, all the things American TV avoided. But instead of being canceled, it became the most talked-about show in Britain. It had been airing since 1965 and kept going until 1975. Lear knew this was it. He told ABC, "This is about the generation gap, for real." He got the rights fast, already thinking about how to reshape it for American living rooms. But then came a twist. Years later, Sally Struthers dropped a bomb. She said Carroll O'Connor had actually seen the British version first, during a personal trip to the UK. He had loved it and wanted to adapt it. He even pitched the idea around. But before he could make a move, Norman Lear swept in and took it, never giving O'Connor credit. According to Struthers, that betrayal sat like a stone between them for years. She didn't hold back. She said she herself spent $40,000 trying to break her contract after season 5, just to get away from Lear. He had once told her he only cast her because she had blue eyes and a fat face. That kind of honesty doesn't come out unless it's been boiling for years. The original Alf Garnett was a lot more brutal than anything American audiences had seen. Johnny Spite, who created him, made no effort to soften the edges. Garnett was a working-class man from East London, full of hate. He ranted against Catholics, Americans, gays, socialists, anyone who wasn't him. The actor Warren Mitchell brought it all to life, spitting insults with fire at every meal. It was so over the top that the BBC destroyed some of the first season's episodes just to avoid more backlash. Even so, the show ended up on the British Film Institute's list of the 100 greatest programs. But when Lear watched it, he knew it wouldn't survive untouched in America. Garnett would have to be toned down. That's how Archie Bunker was born. What made Archie different, though, was how personal he was to Norman Lear. This wasn't just satire. This was Lear's childhood. His father, Herman, was loud and cruel. He used to scream at Norman's mother, "Jeanette, stifle yourself." That line stuck in Norman's head like a nail. One day, Herman got arrested for selling fake bonds and went to prison for 3 years. Norman was 9. His mother left him with relatives, took his sister, and moved to Brooklyn. Just before she left, someone told him he was now the man of the house. That moment stayed with him forever. Later, he said that's when he realized how ridiculous grown-ups could be. The arguments, the drama, the shouting, it all became Archie Bunker. He made Carroll O'Connor say "stifle" exactly like his father had, grabbing Edith by the arms and snapping the word out loud. The pain turned into punchlines, but the roots were real. Still, the networks weren't ready. The first version of the show was called Justice for All. Too bold. It got rejected. Lear made another version called Those Were the Days. It tested well. The audience laughed hard, but ABC panicked. They had already spent $250,000 filming it, which was a huge amount at the time, but they still said no. Lear later said they peed in their pants. They were scared of advertisers, scared of complaints, scared of the real world showing up on TV. When CBS finally picked it up, they renamed it All in the Family and added a long warning at the beginning of the pilot. This was the same CBS that gave people Gilligan's Island and Mr. Ed. Suddenly, they were airing a show where a man used racial slurs in front of a live audience. Casting Archie wasn't easy either. The first choice was Mickey Rooney. He read the script and threw it back. He said people would shoot him in the street for playing someone like Archie Bunker. He wanted nothing to do with it. Then CBS lined up big names like Jackie Gleason, Tom Bosley, and Jack Warden. All three said no. Gleason didn't want to commit to a full series. Bosley had other roles coming. Warden couldn't handle the schedule. Everyone was scared of the script. It was too raw, too real, too loud. Finally, Lear saw Carroll O'Connor in a 1966 film called What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? O'Connor played a hot-headed general named Bolt. That was it. That was the face Lear needed. He said, blustery. I knew it would light up the world in a close-up. O'Connor got the role and won 4 Emmys between 1972 and 1979. Jean Stapleton was never really in doubt. Lear had seen her in Damn Yankees on Broadway and remembered her voice. Other actresses tried, but Stapleton saw something deeper. She told Lear that Edith got 1 zinger per page, and that was all she needed to deflate Archie's hot air. That was the moment Lear knew she understood the soul of the character. Edith wasn't weak. She was patient. She was smart in quiet ways. O'Connor later said Edith helped change America, teaching women how to speak up without shouting. The kids weren't right at first. ABC made Lear shoot 2 pilots with different actors playing Gloria and Mike. They didn't work. The chemistry felt off. When CBS took over, Lear went back to the drawing board. Rob Reiner had already been rejected once, but Lear changed his mind after seeing him on another show. Sally Struthers showed up sick with laryngitis, barely able to talk, but her raw energy impressed Lear. He said it was fate. Penny Marshall, who was dating Rob Reiner at the time, auditioned too, but lost the role to Sally. Even the theme song had a wild story. It was supposed to have a full orchestra, but there wasn't enough money. So they used a piano. Charles Strauss, the composer, played it himself, remembering how families used to gather around the piano at home. The soft, homemade feel of it ended up being perfect. But Carroll O'Connor hated it. He pushed for the original orchestra version. During a contract fight in 1974, he even sued for $64,000 and wanted 12 weeks of vacation in a 24-week contract. The producers were so fed up, they wrote a script that killed Archie off. They were ready to replace him with his friend Stretch Cunningham. O'Connor didn't show up for rehearsals. They said he was sick, but he was protesting. Jean Stapleton, meanwhile, was having fun. She could sing beautifully, but chose to sing badly as Edith. That one off-key note on the word were wasn't a mistake. She practiced to hit it just wrong enough to make it funny. By season 6, she started removing her glasses while singing to make Edith look more vulnerable. Most people didn't know she was acting during the song. They thought she really couldn't sing. And somehow, that song, the simple piano version with the deliberately shaky singing, became a hit. In 1972, it reached number 43 on the Billboard Hot 100. It hit number 30 on the Adult Contemporary chart. Carroll and Jean were credited as artists. The 45 RPM vinyl even ended up in the Smithsonian. The line, "Gee, our old LaSalle ran great," confused everyone so badly that CBS had to hire extra phone operators. Some people thought it said, "Our old sale ran great." Eventually, they re-recorded it so viewers could understand, but the deeper meaning was lost on most. The lyrics were actually mocking Archie's nostalgia. "Mister, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again," wasn't praise, it was satire, but a lot of people took it seriously. On January 12, 1971, when All in the Family finally aired on CBS, nobody cared. The network had barely promoted it, and the country barely noticed it. In its 9:30 p.m. Tuesday slot, it pulled a sad little 15% audience share. It landed in dead last. The pilot had already failed test screenings on both ABC and CBS, but they aired it anyway, almost like a quiet experiment they were prepared to bury. The ratings dropped it to 55th place that first week, and it stayed below 46th for months. CBS had expected backlash. They had people ready to answer angry calls about racism, bigotry, and toilet humor. But the phones stayed quiet. Not because people were okay with it, but because hardly anyone was watching. The reviews weren't quiet, though. Life magazine's John Leonard called it a wretched program, saying the show turned bigotry into a joke. He compared writing about it to fixing a septic tank. Other critics were shocked too, unsure how to explain what they'd just seen. But something else started bubbling underneath. Some people thought it was revolutionary. Others kept watching to see what Archie Bunker would say next. Word of mouth spread slowly, but it was enough to keep it alive. Then came May 9th, 1971. The 23rd Emmy Awards changed everything. In front of a national audience, the entire cast of All in the Family performed a skit, making jokes about left-wingers and John Wayne. That same night, Jean Stapleton won Best Actress. Norman Lear won Best New Series. Then it won Best Comedy Series. Just like that, everything flipped. People who'd ignored it now wanted to see what the fuss was about. It wasn't just a strange little show anymore, it was a winner. CBS took notice. Viewers took notice. Something was changing. That summer, they re-aired the episodes. And this time, something clicked. The reruns exploded. Viewers who missed it the first time suddenly couldn't get enough. It went from struggling to dominate. By the start of Season 2, All in the Family hit a 34.0 rating and reached over 21 million homes. It became the #1 show in America, not just for 1 year, for 5 straight years, from 1971 to 1976, it sat at the top. Each season pulled ratings over 30.0. No sitcom had done that before. It wasn't just popular, it was history. And then came February 19, 1972. That night, Sammy Davis Jr. kissed Archie Bunker on the cheek. It was Season 2, Episode 21. A black man kissed a white man. A Jewish man kissed a Gentile. A man kissed another man. And the audience broke. They laughed uncontrollably for 2 full minutes. That one laugh became the longest recorded laugh in television taping history. CBS had to cut it down for reruns just to let Sammy finish his lines. The moment was so unexpected, so perfect, it shocked the country. And it wasn't even in the script. Carroll O'Connor came up with the idea during taping. Sammy was such a fan of the show, he delayed his own concerts to watch it. That kiss became a flashpoint. It even made it into the Watergate tapes. Nixon ranted about how shows like that were corrupting American values. But that wasn't the only episode to cause a stir. Early in the run, there was an episode where Archie said the N-word on television. The entire episode was meant to expose his ignorance and get challenged by other characters. It aired once in 1971. Then it disappeared. CBS kept it buried for decades. In 2024, Amazon Prime quietly pulled it from their platform. No warning, just gone. Some called it censorship. Others said it was too dangerous. Either way, it vanished. CBS had always feared what Norman Lear would put on screen next. They even had a 23-page list of banned words and topics. They blocked scripts about rape, homosexuality, and religion. One of the most intense fights came in 1977. The episode was called Edith's 50th Birthday. It showed an attempted rape. CBS didn't know what to do. They screened it privately for police and psychologists. They pulled it off air for nearly a month. Some executives wanted to cancel the show entirely. But when it finally aired on October 16, 1977, it pulled in 40 million viewers. That night, millions watched Edith fight back. And they didn't turn away. Another bomb dropped on December 26, 1976. The episode was called The Draft Dodger. A young man who fled to Canada during the Vietnam War came home for Christmas dinner. Sitting across from him at the table was a father whose son had died in Vietnam. CBS censors chopped up the script before it aired. They deleted key political lines. Still, the moment landed hard. At the time, draft dodgers were still wanted men. The FBI still had open warrants. It was only 26 days later that President Carter finally pardoned them. The episode hit at the exact breaking point. It had been pitched in 1973 and buried by agents afraid to submit it. But in 1976, the country was ready. Streaming platforms aren't, not even now. Since 2020, at least 4 episodes have vanished from Amazon Prime. Hulu started slapping content warnings on over half the show. Some episodes, especially about unions and inflation, just disappeared. Words like Negro, homosexual, even Jewish got flagged by content algorithms. Entire parts of television history were quietly deleted, one episode at a time. Norman Lear didn't take orders from CBS. When they tried to censor him, he had a name for how he responded. He called it nuclear blackmail. If they told him to cut something, he would pack his bag, walk to the door, and say, "Call me if you change your mind, but don't look for me in the morning." They threatened to blacklist him. They said walking out could ruin his life, but he didn't care. He told them they could take his house, but not his family. And he could always write something else. The reason this worked is because by 1974, All in the Family was making CBS over $200 million a year. Lear had the power, and he used it. In 1974, something wild happened behind the walls of America's most-watched show. Carroll O'Connor, who played Archie Bunker and made millions laugh every week, dropped a bombshell. He filed a lawsuit for exactly $64,000 in back pay. But the money wasn't even the real shock. He also demanded 12 weeks off during the 24-week production schedule. That meant he wanted to work only half the year but still get paid full salary, between $25,000 and $35,000 per episode. The network was stunned. The star of the #1 show wanted to vanish for half of it and still collect everything. And when they didn't meet his demands, he vanished anyway. For 3 full weeks in July 1974, O'Connor disappeared. The entire set stood frozen. No one could film, no one could write, no one could move forward. Everything shut down because of one man's ego and rage. Norman Lear, the man who created All in the Family, had had enough. He didn't just get angry, he got surgical. In secret, he began filming 5 episodes without Archie Bunker in them. He hired James Cromwell to play Stretch Cunningham, not just as a new supporting face, but as the full-on replacement for Archie himself. If O'Connor didn't come back, Lear had a plan to kill Archie off-screen. Some invented accident would remove him forever, and Stretch would move into the Bunker home and become the new lead. CBS executives were terrified. They greenlit it quietly, terrified their star might never return. Cromwell later said O'Connor got him written off the show because he was getting too many laughs. That fear showed just how threatened O'Connor felt. The network had a backup plan ready to bury their biggest character if they had to. That was the nuclear option. But then came the strike. In 1974, 18 CBS maintenance workers walked out. It wasn't just about money, it was war. And Carroll O'Connor refused to cross the picket line. He said, "I've been a trade union man all my life." And he meant it. He would not work with strikebreakers. But this wasn't just a stand for labor. O'Connor twisted the strike into another weapon against Lear. He accused him of trying to make him look bad, both in public and in the industry. He told the plain dealer, "I cannot work," by the top comic actor on the top comic show on TV, in an atmosphere of labor strife. The network panicked. The show was on the verge of collapse. One man refusing to show up had paralyzed the biggest thing on television. The fights between O'Connor and Lear weren't just about contracts. They went deep. Lear once called O'Connor fearful and misguided. O'Connor shot back that Lear always doubted his sincerity and goodwill. He admitted later, "I got very nasty with him. I fault myself." Then he added something even more revealing. "I made him dislike me. And then, of course, I turned around and disliked him." Lear said it was joyful stress, but he never knew if O'Connor ever felt the joy. The truth was uglier than either would say out loud. At one point, Lear even tried to get O'Connor fired from his own show. That's how much the tension had broken them. What made things worse was how O'Connor waged war over the script. He wanted full creative control. He demanded rewrites. He said Lear's idea of comedy clashed with his own and bragged that "my ideas prevailed." He wasn't subtle. He admitted he had the power to drive everybody crazy, including Norman. He used that power constantly. The two men clashed over tone, lines, themes, everything. Biographer Trip Wetzel described their relationship as contemptuous. Lear wanted control. O'Connor wanted control. And both men felt like they were losing it. O'Connor carried Archie Bunker's voice on his shoulders, and he used that weight like a weapon. Lear hated it, but he couldn't stop it. The result was some of the most powerful television ever made, but it nearly destroyed them both. In the middle of all this chaos, Jean Stapleton stayed calm. In December 1978, she quietly announced she was leaving the show. She didn't storm out. She wasn't angry. She simply said, "I love Edith. She changed my life." But she was afraid if she kept playing Edith, she'd never get to be anyone else. After 9 full seasons, she felt the character had run her course. She wasn't bitter. She just wanted a life beyond the bunker house. In 1979, she told the Detroit Free Press that quit sounded too harsh. It wasn't that kind of exit. It was love, but it was time. At first, Norman Lear wanted to end the show altogether. Without Edith, what was left? But CBS didn't want to let go. Vice President Robert Daly convinced Carroll O'Connor to stay. And so, Archie Bunker's Place was born. Stapleton helped with the transition. She showed up for 5 episodes in the 1979-80 season, giving the audience a bridge from one world to the next. After that, Edith died quietly, off-screen from a stroke during the 1980-81 season. She was gone, but she didn't vanish without grace. Even after all the drama, O'Connor never stopped praising Jean Stapleton. In his 1998 memoir, I Think I'm Outta Here, he wrote about her with nothing but respect. He said Edith Bunker helped change America, that she was a champion for women just by being herself. He wrote that 25 million people saw her every week, and because of her, women began to speak up more. He credited Jean, not just Edith, with that change. He said she gave women courage. The truth is, Carroll O'Connor and Jean Stapleton didn't start with All in the Family. They met years earlier on The Defenders. He played a murderer. She played the witness. And from that strange beginning, they built a working friendship that lasted. Through the fights, the praise, the scripts, the lawsuits, and the standoffs, some relationships burned and others held steady. O'Connor and Lear pushed each other to the edge. O'Connor and Stapleton anchored each other to the ground. In 1995, a quiet home in Pacific Palisades became the scene of a tragedy that broke one of television's most beloved men. On March 28th, 33-year-old Hugh O'Connor, son of All in the Family star Carroll O'Connor, ended his 16-year battle with cocaine addiction by shooting himself in the head. Police later found cocaine in his system. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, his third wedding anniversary with Angela Clayton, but it became the day his father would never recover from. For years, Carroll had tried everything to save his son. Just 5 days earlier, he'd gone to the West Los Angeles police station himself to report Hugh's drug supplier, a man named Harry Perzigian, begging them to arrest him. But nothing worked. Hugh had already gone through 3 rehab programs. He couldn't do it again. That morning, when police surrounded the house for 3.5 hours, it was already too late. The last phone call between father and son still haunted Carroll every single day. Hugh called that afternoon, his voice flat and final. "No, I think I'm going to cap myself today," he said. Carroll tried to talk him down, told him to wait, to let him come over, to get help again. But Hugh just said, "No, Pops, gotta go, so long." He said he couldn't face another 6 months in rehab. Carroll called him back again and again, desperate to keep him talking, to keep him alive. Then he called the police and warned them his son had guns in the house. Officers reached the home just as the gun went off. Later, Carroll replayed that moment in his mind again and again, wondering if he had said something wrong, if maybe refusing to take the call or saying less would have changed the ending. But there was no answer, only the silence that followed. Hours later, Carroll O'Connor did something almost no actor had ever done. He went on national television and named his son's drug dealer. He stood on Primetime Live with Diane Sawyer and called Harry Thomas Perzigian a sleazeball and a partner in murder. He said, not an accessory, a partner in murder. For 6 months before Hugh's death, Carroll had been tracking Perzigian himself. Angela had told him about the dealer, and Carroll had hired a private investigator to follow him. He even confronted Perzigian face-to-face, warning him to stop supplying cocaine to his son. But the man didn't stop. When police finally arrested him the day after the suicide, they found cocaine and drug paraphernalia in his apartment. In January 1996, Perzigian was sentenced to a year in jail, fined $1,000, given 200 hours of community service, and placed on 3 years probation. Carroll didn't stop there. He challenged Perzigian to sue him. He said the man would be fool enough to expose himself once again. The dealer did sue for slander. Carroll won. The pain, though, never left him. He once said, "There isn't a day that I don't think of him and want him back and miss him, and I'll feel that way until I'm not here anymore." He said nothing would ever bring him peace. He told the court, "The biggest part of my life was the acquiring and loss of a son. Nothing was as important as that." When he talked about that final day, his voice trembled. The first thought that went through my head was, at last, it's happened. I think we all wonder if our kids will grow up. I broke down and cried a lot. His mother cried a lot. The grief stayed with him until the end of his life. But he turned it into purpose. He used his fame to talk about drugs, about loss, about what addiction does to families. He said, If his son had to die, at least his story could save someone else. The courtroom became his platform. The interviews became his message, and every word carried the echo of that last call. Hugh's death was more than a tragedy for one family. It showed how deeply addiction can cut through even the strongest bonds. Carroll O'Connor had played Archie Bunker, the gruff but human father who argued his way into America's heart. And now he was living the most painful version of fatherhood himself. The irony was unbearable. The man who helped shape television's golden age was facing a darkness no fame could fix. But his pain became a kind of light. He made sure people listened. He made sure no one forgot Hugh. And through it all in the family kept echoing across generations. The show had changed television forever. Norman Lear's idea to use humor as a mirror for America's problems became the DNA of everything that followed. Without All in the Family, there would be no South Park, no Family Guy, no Simpsons. These shows took Lear's idea and pushed it further, using satire to talk about race, politics, sex, and power. Lear had shown that laughter could expose truths people were afraid to face. In the early 70s, his show dared to show what others hid: flushing toilets, slurs, real arguments. CBS executives had panicked at first, worried people would be offended. They even hired extra phone operators to handle the complaints. But instead, millions tuned in. They weren't angry. They were ready. Lear had cracked open the safe little world of television and let the real one in. By 1976, Norman Lear's programs were reaching 120 million viewers every week. All in the Family didn't just entertain people, it reflected them. It showed families arguing about civil rights, about women's roles, about who America was becoming. Archie Bunker wasn't a hero or a villain. He was the face of an entire generation caught between pride and change. His son-in-law, Mike Stivich, was the younger voice pushing back. Their fights weren't scripted arguments. They were the same ones happening in living rooms all over the country. Lear made that conflict something you could laugh at, think about, and still come back for next week. It made television honest. It made it human. And it taught millions that comedy could be brave.